Hey, this is Dave at Layers. This is the second part of our chat on 13 ways you can build depth into your brand. If you missed the first podcast on this topic, just head back one episode and you can pick up the chat from the start. We hope you enjoy the episode. All right, number 7, inclusiveness.
It's cool to be kind in the right measure.
Yeah. I mean, I think inclusiveness is important because not only is inclusiveness good for a society, but it's also good for brands as well too. And the classic one, the one that I always disliked, was the Billabong one, which was the only a surfer knows the feeling. I just always found that as a really arrogant statement, there's truth in it in the sense of, and I can understand why they use that and why that was their tagline for such a long period of time, but I've noticed that it's now not that anymore, but that was it for like 25 years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, inclusiveness is important, in society and in brands as well too, that, have that element of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take this one as a bit of a horses for courses one as well. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the Billabong one there, and whilst I tend to agree with you, I think there is an element there, though, of, I guess, community or tribalism. There certainly is for some brands. You are trying to appeal to a certain sort of people and not the rest, if you know what I mean. We talk about it a bit in terms of niching or, being really clear who you're going after, and that you can't be everything for everyone, and not necessarily saying that that's right in their case, but I think it is an example where being clear who you're for and then just really honing in and appealing to them, can be quite valuable.
Yeah.
I think the general social aspect of being inclusive, but not, and not being, willfully exclusive or derogatory to any groups or whatever is good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, again, sometimes it can actually be part of the strategy to almost create a tribe.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I think the thing is the tribal aspect is important. Especially if you're an early stage brand as well too. I think just having that core group of dedicated enthusiasts around whatever the topic or the subject or the brand is about. It can be very, very helpful. It becomes a bit more challenging as you want to try and scale a brand. And I think you've got to start thinking about, okay, how do we make this brand a bit more inclusive? But I think the early kernels of any brands have got to look like it's more based on tribes.
Yeah, I think maybe even what we're getting at there is partly in the way you go about it.
Yeah.
So you can stand for a certain group or try and appeal to a certain group, but you don't have to do it in a way that is deliberately or overtly alienating everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Number 8. All right, so we're ticking them off. Association's always been one of the foundational elements of building a brand. And what I mean by association is that it's this idea of pairing your brand with whether it's a lifestyle or an image or an outcome that sort of sits very nicely on the shelf of your offering. And so I think this one's tried and tested and it works, and there's a lot of psychology in and around this. But yeah, I think association is something that you want to think deeply about. So, for example, like one of the brands that I follow is a wetsuit brand, and the wetsuits aren't really featured that often in their social media. It's more surfing remote locations because I guess they realise that customer that buys that type of wetsuit is really into like travel and getting off the beaten track, and that's, I think, very clever in the way that they've kind of pitched that brand.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the association thing is still a really important part to any modern framework.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the oldest tricks in the book, right?
It is.
If you drink this Gatorade, you'll be like Michael Jordan. It's the cool by association, or sort of unspoken benefit that is implied that you'll get by buying this product. And yeah, you're right. It's definitely 100% still very relevant and viable today. If anything, probably becomes even more so as the whole point of this podcast is a way to differentiate. Because if there are a lot of same wetsuits, but you feel like one sort of gets you or represents more of the lifestyle that you aspire to, then you're definitely going to create a stronger brand affinity with that.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely, for me, it's one of those things where it's like, this is like that added layer to keep adding to your mix, so you probably, if you're only trying to differentiate on this aspect, but your product isn't great or your service isn't great or whatever, you're going to lose out. Whereas to me, it's like, if you focus on those things first and you've got them nailed, but then you can add this layer of understanding and community, I think that just boosts what you're already doing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to think about like higher ideals as well with your brand. Like, yes, we offer accounting services, but what is the higher thing? What is the higher purpose in all of this? And sometimes it's a tricky one to answer. But yeah, association, as you say, is like one of the oldest tricks in the book, but it's still really important. It's one to definitely keep resurfacing, keep thinking about, because it's one of the ways that you can win. You can win on that point alone.
Yeah.
All right, environment. Save the trees, win customers.
It's one close to your heart, Dave.
It's always been close to my heart. But yeah, I definitely think, sustainability and, the environment and how we are creating our brands for the future have to pay attention to the environmental aspects. I mean, there's lots that have been said on. We've talked about this quite a bit as well on our podcast, but aligning yourself with environment and with sustainable practices is, I don't think it's even a nice to have now. I think it's a mandatory for all brands to start thinking that way. Like, look at what, say for example, I think one of the best things Woolworths ever did was started to ban the plastic bag. I think those grocery brands took real leadership on all that stuff. Look at the huge amount of difference that's made already. And that's only really a small token of the things that they could be doing and heading in the right direction. But it's difficult as well too. Like for example, one of the other brands that we work with, Plants in a Box, there's plenty of things in their packaging and materials that they want to just shift over to things that are biodegradable or compostable and compost inside of 45 days. Some of those products just don't even exist now in the market. So there's an opportunity out there downstream if you're one of those packaging manufacturers to actually make sure that you articulate that. Because you'll win customers that way. There are brands out there that are actively looking to find people to work with, and so there's an opportunity for sure. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas then for brands in the services space there, or like other ways that you can, I guess, align yourself with that or contribute to that movement that are less obvious?
Yeah, I mean, I think with services brands it's a little different, right? Because we don't tend to use resources in the same way. Like, we don't necessarily have a lot of packaging. A lot of it is just knowledge, right? Like, it's transfer of knowledge and producing. So yeah, I think it's more challenging, but I don't think it's any less important. So for example, the building that you're renting, can you influence the owner to put some solar panels on the roof, for example? What is your policy around printing emails and paper and just like when you're printing, like actually for like some of those assets that you might use to take to customer meetings, like are they printed on recycled stock or are they printed on new stuff? So yeah, it's just thinking about, like, every business, when you think about the touch point of every business, there'll be an opportunity there which to reduce. I don't know, what about you? Do you see an opportunity there? Or?
Oh yeah, like you say, I mean, there's even ways I think that you can sort of donate some of your profits again to take it back to the causes thing that we talked about. You could invest in carbon offsets or tree planting or something, even if it's not not as direct as you say with the packaging example. There's opportunities for every brand, I'm sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right, number 10, made right here. And I think this is an interesting one because back in the 80s, I don't know if you remember, but like TV commercials, there seemed to be a lot of like Australian made was like it was like a huge thing, right?
Yeah, I remember the triangle with the kangaroo in the middle, the Australian made symbol, and you'd see that flashed across the screens for sure.
Yeah, and this is not to be nationalistic in any way because that's not what it's about, because there's many other good places to source manufacturing from, and probably cheaper, but it is an interesting thing. Like, I think it's almost a bit novel, especially to a newer generation of consumers. Like, say, if you're between 15 and 30, like you probably haven't really been exposed to the made right here in whatever country. But it is an interesting way to differentiate, and to talk about your products being made here on our shores. Therefore, the environmental aspects are interesting there too, because you're not having to ship it all the way from over in China, for example. I think the made right here thing is really interesting to me. Like, that's a place where I reckon you could really differentiate again.
Yeah, and I think to just build on a point that you made there, I think that what makes it interesting is teasing out those additional benefits of that. Like, why should we care in this day and age? Because I think you're right that it used to just be purely nationalistic, or at least a lot of it was, I'm Australian, it's Australian made. Yeah. Too right. Whereas now I think, especially that younger generation that you're talking about, I think they're less, caring about that. They live in a much more global society, and I don't think they really care as much purely about that part of it. So to me, it's identifying and communicating, like, why should I care about that? As you say, is it the environmental benefit? Is it some other reason that being Australian made is good?
Yeah. I think this particularly applies to food producers. We have, amazing food and crops that are grown right here in Australia. And so I think food is a really important one. But there are other, like, raw materials that don't necessarily need to be shipped across the other side of the world to be made to then be returned back into Australia as well. So, and I think quality is another interesting aspect as well too. I think that's something you can really lean on. That's definitely a pillar. Like, if your product does have really high quality, then then you should be talking about and linking that to the Australian made aspect. And the same goes if you're in America. Like, I noticed that there's more and more American manufacturing going on. They're bringing more of that back in to their own country. I mean, Germany has always been a classic one as well too. It's like Volkswagen is still manufactured in Germany. But they're just using lots of great engineering and innovation to make sure that they do it cost effectively.
So, it's cool.
All right, number 11, common interest build communities. Community, that's I guess that's almost like the holy grail for every brand, is to say that they have a legitimate community. And I think Seth Godin said this best. He said, we simply have the privilege to talk to a community, to connect a community, and perhaps to lead them for a while. But it's just a mistake to believe that they're ours to do with as we choose. And I think those words are pretty true in that sense. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think that certainly you see it that a lot of the strongest brands, I guess, are ones that inherently fit into a community that already exists, and by virtue of the product or other lifestyle messaging associations, etc., that they just boost what that community already wants, or gives them more of what they want. Whereas the other way around would be to try and manufacture a community that doesn't exist, or sort of more that kind of pushing, selling mentality of just creating a need where a need or desire doesn't exist. So certainly, if you can understand your community and what they're about, and really get to know them, that's a huge boost for your brand.
Do you think you've got to come from a community of enthusiasts to really build an authentic one? For example, like if you were really into, say, mountain bike riding, and you came from that community and you produced a product that was helpful for that community. Do you need that for authenticity, or do you reckon you can build it the other way, like where you just come up with your product idea and then you go and find the community? I mean, do you think that's possible to do that?
I'm sure it's possible. There'd probably be a number of examples. I think sometimes the whole passion angle does get a bit overblown. It's certainly, I think, very helpful, and if you're especially talking about entrepreneurship, you need a lot of that passion, I think, to keep going. When things are tough. But I think it's, it is possible the other way around. I mean, if you're, I guess, analytical enough to look at if you want to get super analytical about it and look at a segment of the market and do the research to understand their needs and then come up with a product that satisfies their needs in a new way that hasn't been done before, you can do all that without passion.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly, as I said, I think that trying to manufacture a community where there isn't one is very difficult. It's usually more the other way around, where you're trying to, I guess, align, as you say, it'd be ideal if you're aligning your passion with a community that exists to create a brand or product that, really fits in and boosts their wants, needs, lifestyle, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Let's talk about environment, and specifically the environment that you come to work in as well too, but also as a customer, the spaces you come to visit. I mean, the one that always comes to mind is Apple stores. They're just the epitome of the clubhouse.
Yep.
And where the community does gather as well too.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a place where you can win on brand as well too. And I think what brand doesn't really have some physical touch point?
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about how you use that to your advantage is a way that you can win, I think, because it's an opportunity to really tell the story in a really rich and deep way.
Yeah.
And even the office that we're coming from now, there's an opportunity on these walls. There's an opportunity within this office to do a lot better than we are currently doing at the moment. There's always an opportunity, I think, to try and build that sense of what the brand means in a physical way.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, think about office spaces, about shop spaces, any physical touch points that you have as a brand, that is an opportunity for sure.
Yeah, and I think an interesting extension of that is even then for brands that are largely digital, and how they tap into that. Whether it's as simple as even their own offices, to create that touch point for their internal customers, being their staff.
Yeah.
Or if it's through things like events and meetups and stuff like that, where they're, I guess, forcing people to get out from behind the screens and interact on a human level.
That's a really good point.
Important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Digital brands, it's no point putting your head under the covers. Like, that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, you're even seeing it from a lot of e-com brands where they're, almost going backwards and opening up some flagship stores or showcase locations, where you can come in and touch and feel the product. It's still important, even if they don't have 100 stores, They're still trying to create those physical human moments.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we all got so excited about digital 15 years ago and what it would open up. And it is curious to me that it doesn't matter how digital the world becomes, how strongly technology is playing an influence in our life, we still want that human element, more than ever, I think, actually. So
yeah.
All right, and then let's talk about lucky number 13. And this is, positioning is probably one of the most critical things that you can do. And a lot of what we've already talked about is actually driving towards positioning.
Yeah.
But, claiming that position and crafting your message, that's going to be a critical factor. And not being scared to go and stake that territory, and say this is our domain, this is our niche, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
That is becoming even more and more important. Don't try and be for everybody, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this one is really kind of the culmination of all the others. and probably the trickiest in a sense, because I think what we're really saying here is like, you probably can't do 1 through 12 and do them all well. You know, it's actually, to me, about choosing, again, the 2 or 3 things that most align with your brand and community and product and what you stand for, and finding those, I guess the unique way that you even then combine those few things together. We were talking before about Allbirds, and to me it's interesting how, they've done the simplicity, they've done the environmental thing, they've done the, community aspect probably to a degree as well. They've selected those few things, but then they've put it together in this very cohesive package as well, so it's not just about picking those things, but wrapping it up in one coherent story. This is what we stand for, and as you say, really crafting that message to lay claim to your corner, I guess, that you're fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest takeaway, I think, is making sure that you craft that message, that you stake that claim, and that you find your position in the market. Yeah,
because it's got to be clear and understandable.
Yeah.
Like if you try and be all these things, it's just going to be super wishy-washy and
absolutely,
and not cut through.
Yep, 100%.
Beautiful. Well, we got through 13 things in one podcast.
13 things. That's a record. Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, MC, for stepping through that.
No worries. Thanks, Dave.
See you next week.
Cheers, mate.